Chapter 1. The three remaining members of B Team sat looking unhappy, and feeling worse, in the room known as the chamber. It was a little depressing to begin with, starkly masculine, with cement block walls and gaslit torches. It was supposed to be anachronistic, reminiscent of a fortress, a reminder that the Order of the Black Swan had a long history. They were debriefing, recounting the circumstances of their teammate's death. Sir Lansdowne had been more than a co-worker. How do you describe how you feel about a guy who watches your rear in live or die situations? Family, maybe. Brothers. The three survivors were aware they were being observed and evaluated by the unit's psychiatrist. He sat a few feet away on one of the bench seats, pretending to be invisible, but fooling no one. They were near the end of the grim formality when there was a sudden upward shift in temperature, like a hot Sirocco wind blasting a door open. That was followed by a flash of light and a pop as something the size of a person rolled into the fetal position, materialized above the floor at waist height. It did not hover, but fell instantly to the stone floor, making a sickening plopping noise on impact. It appeared to be a bloody, quivering mass of scored meat, partially covered by shreds of fabric that were either black or blackened by blood. The 5 men stared at the thing, even in their line of work, being accustomed to highly unusual phenomena. This was astonishing. There they were, the scientist, the administrator, and 3 battle-hardened knights of the Order of the Black Swan, members of the elite B Team, frozen in indecision, a development that was foreign to men whose lives depend on quick thinking. Being in charge, and presumably wisest, Sovereign Saul was the first to speak.
What the fuck?
What was that? Ram asked with an Irish lilt. To punctuate his revulsion, his face was screwed up the way it might be if something smelled very, very bad. He shook his gorgeous head of hair and leaned forward just a little for a closer look with laser-sharp blue eyes. Rammel Hawking was the smallest member of B Team, or Bad Company as their peers like to call them, at just about 6'1". He had a thick head of multi-hued blonde hair that was at once a mess and a miracle. It waved, curled, stuck out in random places, and hung just short of his shoulders. Kay cocked his head, then glanced toward Storm.
Shaped like a human.
Saul sniffed and took a step to his right, as if he could learn more from a different angle, and answered for Storm.
Not much of a recommendation. So are a lot of things that aren't.
While the 5 continued to speculate, the blob on the floor began to move and moan softly. Ram was slammed with an acute case of gut instinct. His solar plexus was throbbing, sending off signals he couldn't begin to interpret. He didn't know whether to feel alarmed or intrigued. Moreover, he was disturbed by getting an autoerotic hard-on, which was, at the very least, disgusting, and, at the very worst, perverted. In a completely out-of-character moment, he went contrary to his usual impulsive, risk-taking behavior, deciding to err on the side of caution.
I have a bad feeling. I think we should kill it. Kill it now.
The man standing closest to the thing, Ingle Storm, looked down at its face, into thin slits of eyes, greenish blue maybe. recessed behind gruesome protrusions of swelling that could make the most callous warrior a little squeamish. It was then the thing seemed to reach out to him. He hesitated for a heartbeat, then knelt down, almost compulsively, trying to sort out the best way to gather it into a shape that he could lift and carry. Saul stepped in.
Don't touch it. We don't know what it is. It could be anything. A disguised machine, or a suicide mission, carrying explosives, or toxic chemicals, or a spell.
Storm ignored Saul's comments, not even bothering with the courtesy of a glance in his direction, and continued rearranging the mess as gently as possible. Whatever it was hurt, badly. It groaned and whimpered in pain with every touch or movement, opening and closing its mouth in agony. It needed help. It had asked for help when it reached out to him, and it was neither Storm's style nor job description to stand around debating precautions and policy when someone, or something, was in desperate need of assistance.
Call the infirmary. Get them ready for an incoming emergency.
He said it calmly, but the teammates who knew him so well heard the underlying resolve. Ram started toward the wall phone.
Ignore that!
The older man said more forcefully. He was starting to sound exasperated and was glaring at Storm.
Are you not hearing me?
He wheeled on Ram.
Hawking, don't you move another step!
Ram hesitated for 2 seconds, looking back and forth between Storm and Saul, before saying to the older man,
Sorry, you know we don't do orders. I'm not joking!
Saul gaped at him.
2 minutes ago, you were voting to kill it now!
Ram looked over his shoulder and shrugged as he punched in the infirmary code.
Storm is call.
Ingall's Storm was 6'4", with shoulders as wide as a doorway, but he still struggled to get to his feet with the thing in his arms. It was heavier than it looked, a lot heavier. Plus, all the blood and oozing made it slippery. On top of that, his sympathetic nature made him wince internally every time it cried out in pain. Seeing that Storm needed assistance, Kay had squatted down on the other side of it to help with the lifting. He pinned Storm with a pointed look and lowered his voice.
Might be better to have him send a gurney. You could be causing more damage.
He looked down at the unidentifiable mass.
If that's possible.
Storm shook his head to get dark locks away from his eyes and turned that familiar, piercing, no-nonsense gaze on his friend.
No time.
Kay nodded and tried to help lift the whatever it was so that Storm could get a good enough grip to carry.
Hope you know what you're doing.
Once Storm and Kay had it up and balanced in Storm's arms, the thing's head lolled onto his chest and stayed there. He walked as fast as he could. The infirmary wasn't far, but he was carrying what felt like his own weight. Fluids were leaking so fast that rivulets were running down his pants, onto his boots and under the soles, making for slick footing. A couple of times, he had to jerk an upright correction to keep from going into a skid on the polished marble flooring. He was breathing heavy, but speaking quiet assurances, words of encouragement delivered in short sentences.
Hang in there now. It'll be okay. We're almost there. Almost there.
Ram and Kay, passing him on either side, went ahead, crashing through the infirmary double doors, a second before he arrived.
Where do you want us?
Ram shouted at the med staff that ran to meet them. Within seconds, the med team had taken Storm's burden and moved it onto a gurney. The team hustled toward the operating theater, firing questions about the nature of the injury on the way. Then, the 3 remaining members of B Team found themselves standing side by side, staring at the blank side of a door. Ram looked at his teammates.
What the fuck just happened? I guess they're pretty good at their job. At least they're fast,
said Kay. Ram nudged Storm on the shoulder.
Stormy, good call. Let's go get a drink.
Kay snorted.
Is there ever a time you don't want to get a drink?
Ram looked thoughtful, as if he was trying to formulate a serious answer to that question. Kay just shook his head, smiling.
Never mind. You can't help being Irish, but sometimes I think it's your answer to the meaning of life.
The 2 started away. Looking down at the front of his clothes, Kay realized he was wearing a lot of gore.
We might want to grab a shower and change first.
After a few steps, they noticed Storm hadn't moved. You coming? He continued to stand motionless, looking at the closed door. Kay eased back to Storm's side and spoke in hushed tones.
Hey, what's up? You've seen stranger stuff than this.
Ram had come up on the other side.
What stranger?
Storm blinked and looked down at the bloody mess that used to be his clothes.
These are gonna have to be burned.
Yeah, probably. Let's get cleaned up and grab a whiskey.
Kay nodded and glanced at Ram like he was projecting telepathically. He was thinking that they'd been through a lot and that it might be showing on Storm. Storm looked at Kay and focused in. He could see that from their point of view, this would appear to be odd behavior. Truth told, he had been trying to cover up a little depression since Lan's death. Intellectually, he knew he wasn't responsible, but his heart wasn't in complete agreement.
Thanks for the backup.
He looked between Kay and Ram and even managed a little smile. Kay raised an eyebrow that said, "I'm not buying it," but let it pass. He was a couple of inches taller than Storm, with sandy brown hair that streaked blonde in the summer, and Northman blue eyes. He was a poster child for split personality. At times such as these, he was the essence of reason, the counsel you would seek if your life depended on good advice. Then, there was the other side. Kay was a full-blooded berserker from a legendary line that had immigrated to South Texas in the late 19th century and settled there. His name was actually Chaos Kalian. When he first landed on B Team, Ram started calling him Sir Kay, after the Round Table Knight who was King Arthur's foster brother, thinking the play on words was pretty funny. Ram had a talent for keeping himself entertained. It caught on. Pretty soon everybody else was calling him Kay, and it stuck. Ram gave Storm a grin that showed off teeth so white and even, you would swear they were veneers, but they weren't.